Hello, my fellow readers. This is I Dark Symphony 777 with another fan fiction review. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts on the story, and finally, listen to my opinion. My opinion is not indicative in the world, so please respect that. So, first off, I'm back! It's been an entire month since I last recorded. That includes the TD video I did previously. I let that just sit in my YouTube thing, waiting to upload it. So yeah, so it's been a month. I'm actually relaxed. I'm actually planning on taking my first vacation from work ever in the 10 years I've been working in general, not a specific job, just in general. But that's me getting harping on about that. But first, Castlevania Nocturne Ruin. So this is a Castlevania fanfiction by Draconic, and I have to say, I didn't like it. I really don't like it. There is some minor parts here and there that I do like about the story, but ultimately, on the whole, I don't think the story was very good. But let's talk about the specifics. So, the specific of the story is there's two things you need to actually know about, or more specifically, what games you need to know about. They are Castlevania Symphony of the Night and Castlevania Portrait Ruined. Why do they have to relate to the story? Well, for Symphony of the Night, two of the main characters of the story are Alucard Tepes, who is Dracula's son, and also Maria Belle Fox, who eventually becomes the reincarnation of Maria Renard, who is a key character in Symphony of the Night. For Portrait Ruin, that's obvious. This story is technically a sequel to Portrait Ruin. It takes place 3 years after that game. So, now we got that out of the way. What is this? What is the actual plot? Well, the actual plot is about Jonathan, Charlotte, and the Licardi sisters all just relaxing. They're trying to figure out where to go to college. Well, the Licardi sisters are going to college, where they run into a boy named Oliver, or more accurately, he kind of knocks on the door, who tells them that Dracula's castle has risen up from the darkness again, and they have to go and stop it. Eventually, they go to Castle Dracula. They run into Death, as well as Alucard, and they also find out Maria's kind of stuck along with them. Death gives them the details about it. So there's this bad guy named Alistair Bernhardt, who is the descendant of Walter Bernhardt from Castlevania Lament of Innocence. They have to traverse the castle and kill a specific member of his organization named Carmilla, who made a barrier actively preventing Death from infiltrating the castle and therefore trying to stop Alistair himself. So he basically kind of, I'm the one that kind of invited you, but I need you here because you're the ones who can help me deal with this. All right. They eventually all go into the castle. Oliver stays behind and kind of opens up a little store with Death kind of overseeing things. They eventually run into Alistair and his two subordinates, Carmilla and Count Orlok, and the story kind of just meanders its way through a rinse and repeat where they enter a specific part of the castle, they get split up some way, somehow, and one or two of the groups fight some enemies. There's some other characters that get involved. There is a succubus who is the daughter of the succubus who kind of messed with Alucard and Symphony at Night. They even fight like Wall Shadow from Yu-Gi-Oh! Not exactly Wall Shadow, but the guy was based off Wall Shadow. I wonder if the author knows about the Gate Guardian support that came out last year. Eventually, and they kind of repeat this. Eventually, they beat Carmilla, they beat Auroch, and they do confront Alistair, who reveals that his plan was to revive Walter Bernhardt and eventually take power and the castle back from Lord Dracula. Because, of course, if you know the Castlevania timeline, you know the castle was actually Walter's castle. It was originally Walter's castle. Then when Dracula took over, he basically took the castle too. And now they want the castle and the power back. Everyone fights Alistair. They beat Alistair. However, Alistair manages to wake up Walter by sacrificing himself. Charlotte, Jonathan, and Alucard go after Walter, while uh, Maria has to stay behind and lead Loretta and Stella Lacarde to safety. Eventually, Death joins in because now Death can actually access the castle again, and basically joins the heroes to fight off Walter. Walter basically holds his own pretty well against them. He eventually finds Dracula's crypt where Dracula's sleeping, manages to slay Death temporarily. Of course, you can't kill Death. And then when he's weakened, because Jonathan uses the whip's I cannot remember the name of that special ability. The one where he summons the other Belmonts from like the whip to beat up to attack. In his weakened state, he opens up the crypt. Dracula was awake, kind of revived the entire time. One shots Walter, realizes that both Sarah Trontul and Leon Belmont were somehow there in the crypt, and he basically just tells everyone who's there a little story about when he was human, and then he just tells them to just leave. And afterwards, we get a little thing where Maria, now fully taken over Maria Bell's body, offers to, while Maria's trying to figure out a way, her and Maria's trying to figure out a way to switch back, so like Maria can go back to the other afterlife, to want to show Alucard the modern world. Like we can find out about these new conveniences like this TV, and we can do it together. And also Loretta ends up with like a prosthetic leg. Nice. But that's ultimately the plot. I did gloss over a lot of stuff. However, a lot of the minor details of the plot is just very repetitive. It's just they go somewhere, they separate, they fight whatever boss is in an area, and then they just rinse and repeat over and over and over again. Sometimes we get like them talking to Alistair, and Alistair's like, ah. But ultimately, that's more or less the plot. The characters. We technically have about 9 characters, 11 if you count Oliver and Death, and 12 if you count the Succubus. Oliver, Death, and the Succubus, I'm not going to count. They're fine for what they are. Oliver acts as like the in-universe version of like the shopping area where you basically buy items. So it's a neat little attempt to incorporate a gameplay element of the Metroidvania games. I don't think they're in every Metroidvania games. I know I know that it's not in Circle of the Moon. I don't know about Harmony of Dissonance. Maybe. But the rest of the games, they have shops. Death is mainly there as exposition. He's there to kind of explain who Alistair is, kind of talk about the plan as a whole, and then just also kind of just bother Slorga and Gaibon to just do stuff for him. And then the Succubus is really just there to kind of hammer home the theme of reincarnation and also kind of forgiveness of the past sort of deal. I don't know what the deal with the Succubus was, honestly. When I first read this, I thought, it's like a reincarnation thing. I was like, she's like the reincarnation of the Succubus, sort of, who messed with Alucard, and now she's just there. But she offers really nothing besides being perpetually horny. Granted, we get like a little funny moment where like she's unintentionally cursed. Like every time when she tries to be horny, she pictures Count Ulrach's mind in her head, and she's like, "Please kill this guy so I could go back to being horny, please." And when they eventually kill him, he's like, "Yes, I can be unrepentantly horny again. Thank you, goodbye," and then just leaves, never be seen again. But other than those 3, we still have about 9 more characters. We have Charlotte and Loretta, who are really disappointing for what they're supposed to be. A big problem, I think, with this story is the author tries to juggle too many characters over the course of the story. Because, again, you have the 6 core group of characters. You have the Lacarde sister, Jonathan, Charlotte, and then Maria and then Alucard, and you also kind of try and juggle the bad guys. That's along with like 110,000 word story. You're trying to juggle 9 characters, and there's always going to be like one or two characters kind of get forgotten, and that's what the Licardi sisters are. They are just there. They don't. The author tries to give them something to do, but it always fails because at the end of the day, they're really just there. Like, there's a moment where they run into Bronner's ghost, and Bronner gives them the Alucard lands, which is crafted by Maria and Alucard, and then Stella just doesn't use it. She gives it all up twice. She buys a pair of rapiers from Oliver, but the rapiers disappear into the castle, and she has to go find them. She finds them, and then later she finds another pair of rapiers. But still, nothing happens because she's really just there as like a buffer for like fight scenes. Like, oh, I need a fight scene, quick, use these two. Loretta, at least Stella gets something. Loretta's she's just cardboard. She's just there in the background, just doing nothing, just saying nothing, doing nothing. Even the author kind of admits that he kind of abandoned her, and like, oh, I gotta do something with her. But that's fine. It's something. But then ultimately, just like with Stella, doesn't really do much of anything. The author at least, gives her a bone at the end by like having her lose a leg, and then she gets a prosthetic, but nothing's done with it. Okay. Jonathan and Charlotte. Jonathan is his typical lugheaded self. He's functionally fine. We do get something with Charlotte, though, with her being a tsundere. She basically takes a look at Maria and Alucard's dynamic and the fact they're kind of falling in love with each other, and then she goes like a little tsundere rant where she starts opening up her blossom and showing off her chest, her lack of chest, really, and tries to entice Jonathan, who's not really buying it because Jonathan's very dense, and then she kind of gets upset at the fact that you're not paying attention to me, but then when he does pay attention, he's like, you're paying attention to me. It's like, what did I do? And it kind of repeats that. It's a neat little dynamic. It doesn't really differ from their actual behavior from Portrait Ruin, besides the whole Charlotte wanting to show off her bosom sort of deal. But ultimately, the author doesn't really do much with them either. Does more than the Licardi sisters, because you're already working with a dynamic that already exists, but working with a dynamic that already exists, not really doing much with anything. It leaves it lacking. That leaves the protagonists, Alucard and Maria Bell. And I have to say, for all the stuff, I'm going to give crap for the story, because once I get to pacing and stuff, that's when I'm really going to tear the story apart. I do want to at least appreciate the fact that Maria Bell and Alucard are actually written pretty decently. You have Maria Bell, who's honestly just there as just a random person. She doesn't have any powers. She doesn't have any skills. She's just a college student, and she kind of believes that basically they're just all going to like a party or something like that. So she joins them and kind of gets like wrapped up in the whole shenanigans. But over time, she does eventually, she starts to get memories of who she used to be, i.e. Maria Renard. And that causes conflict with Alucard, because he's seen Maria die, and death even takes her soul to the afterlife. And Alucard tries to fight him. It's like, I'm really just doing my job here this time, so I'm not going to try and impose you, but I'm death. This is my job. And it causes a neat little dynamic where like both of them are questioning each other about how they view the time frame from when Symphony of Night happened to now and takes in place of the story. It's a neat little dynamic. I kind of like it, with Maria struggling to kind of split herself between Maria Bell and Maria Renard, and Alucard constantly questioning himself and constantly like in this mindset of, you're like, who are you? why, like, you look so much like her, you're acting like her, you have memories like her. And I like the dynamic. I think especially near the end when the author actually realizes what he at least has and tries to play in it. Like, there's a part where near the end where all three groups kind of split. The Locardi sisters, they fight a sort of super dryad. Um, Jonathan and Charlotte basically do like a little dance in the ballroom, while Maria and Alucard but Maria like chose Alucard a movie. Like, it's like, what is this? It's like, it's a film reel. It's like, it shows moving pictures. It's not where you can be entertained. It's like, how does it work? And they basically set it up and they basically watch King Kong. It's very sweet. I like it. And at the end, where Maria basically starts speaking in Maria Bell's head, like, you're not, and Maria Bell is fighting Menace from Donisaro. Maria basically switches mentally with Maria Bell, so now Maria Bell's like the subconscious, and Maria's like the frontal presence, and it's like, you think that's where the natural endpoint of this arc would go, but then afterward, after they defeat Menace, Maria is like begging, like kind of begging for forgiveness. It's like, I will teach you how to basically do the incantation to switch back, so that way you can be with Alucard, because I just wanted to help you, and it's like, my time is kind of up. So now we have like this dynamic where they both occupy the senses, where like, instead of like a normal reincarnation, it's like a forceful reincarnation. But Maria's like, I just want you to be happy, but now I kind of stuck in the back of my head until you learn until you learn the love of my lessons to be able to switch back, because you have to be the one to switch us back, not me. But ultimately, I like the dynamic. I think it's very sweet. I think it's very homey. I think it's honestly the only really good part of the story. It does feel a bit more on the sappy side, but ultimately I liked it. I think it's fine for what it was. The bad guys. So we have Carmilla, Alrock, and Alistair. Carmilla's a weakling. She's basically a forge master, and she basically has like this zoo kept up where she's like uh performing like all these horrific things on monsters to kind of, I think, like Frankenstein them and sort of thing, and they come across a Gurgoth, an alive Gurgoth, but she's kind of a joke. She's really just there to kind of keep death out of the castle, which, fine. There are better uses for a bad guy than to keep like death out of the castle. Fine. Alistair he exists. Like, I guess the author was trying to go for like a more younger, more arrogant version of Walter, because if you played Element of Innocence, Walter's entire thing was he was very bombastic, very charismatic, very vain and arrogant, but he always backed up the words because of all the lore surrounding him, the fact that he's been doing this for years, and he's just really just reciting, kind of just going by the pattern. So having a more younger, arrogant, like not like assured himself, theoretically would work, if not for the fact there's not enough background information for Alistair, like visual clues. This is more of a thing where, because of there's not really a lot of backstory on Alistair. Like, we don't know if he's actually a descendant of Walter. But then there's also the fact there's not really a lot of environmental lore bits or world building in this story. It's just a straightforward get to the top in castle. So there's not stuff that's like on the outer fringes, like what Lamb of Innocence did with Walter, with revealing that he was originally just a vampire, and then he only started doing the events of everything, like kidnapping the lady and getting the guy to come after her, because he was just so bored of everything that this was like the only way he can find entertainment. But Alistair is such a pathetic villain that I just couldn't take him seriously. I can't. Rock, on the other hand, He was absolutely a riot. I know the whole point of Allrock is supposed to be hated. Like this whole his whole point is that he's supposed to be sexist and very old fashioned and just horrific and the other way. But I think the author did like the wrong thing by just making him so obnoxiously oblivious to everything going around him. He kind of became endearing. Like there's a part where Jonathan and Charlotte they're basically fighting Alrock around the halfway point of the castle. Charlotte's like right in front of Alrock and she casts a lightning bolt at him and he gets zapped. And then instead of like wondering what's going on, he immediately turns to Jonathan, who's like several feet away from Charlotte. He said, "How dare you do the lightning bolt?" It's like, and even like I'm actually laughing at the whole thing because it's actually delivered perfectly as like a delusional old fashioned sexist sort of character. And he over the top is what I'm trying to say for Allrock. He's just outrageously over the top in such a way that he goes from like really really bad to like badly entertaining sort of deal. Because even when he dies, I'm like, I at least liked him better than Carmilla and Alistair. Alistair's like he's still kind of written bad because he only showed up like twice, but and compared to Alistair and Carmilla, there's something for him. As repugnant as I may be sounding, it's something. I can at least appreciate the fact that something went to him. Grammar. Okay, there's grammar. It's written so poorly. Let's not focus on the entire story. Let's just focus on grammar in conjunction with the fight scenes. So, the fight scenes are simultaneously very, very bad, like very fast paced and very slow paced, and that's due to the grammar and the language the author uses. The author uses a lot of very loads of adjectives. I would say, like, okay, so I would say right here. Let's go. Yeah. Okay. So we have right here where the author uses a lot of dialogue and well not so much a lot of dialogue but more a lot of very fast-paced adjective stuffs to kind of describe how multiple people are fighting, but instead of blending the words into like a sentence where everyone is trying in a way that makes sense, it looks like a word salad, like, oh, here's what they're doing but then here's what they're doing in not a very logical way, I would say. And it kind of shines that the author was probably inexperienced at writing fight scenes because especially multi people fight scenes, because it's harder to write a fight scene with like multiple fights happening or fights where there's where there's more than two participants. It's a much different, like it's much easier writing with like 1v1s than like anything else, and that's just the name of the game. I don't really have anything outside of how the fights are happening. I don't really have anything bad to say with the grammar. Like I said, the fights are probably the worst from a writing from a purist writing standpoint, because of just how wordy how clunky they're written, pacing, and everything else. So there is a big problem with the story in the fact that this is one of the only fan fictions I can safely say that it gets really worse if you know the lore. Like if you know the insider lore, like the lore of Castlevania as a whole, then this story gets infinitely worse. It starts off very mediocre if you don't know the lore, but everything just falls completely to shambles the moment you even dig a little bit into the Castlevania storyline and all the little details. And a lot of that has to do with internal consistency. This story is very inconsistent with how it's using the lore. Probably the biggest one is Alistair's plan. So his plan is waking up Walter to basically take over the castle. That's not a bad plan. However, the consistency part of that is how he goes about it. So he basically just shows up to Jonathan and Charlotte. He just basically says a few words and leaves. And then he shows up where they meet like other characters. They not only Alrock and Carmilla, but also Jokheim and Ludamisk. And basically, he uses his Damascus sword and just basically plunges them. And he's using the blood of these 4 vampires plus a 5th one, which he was hoping it would be Alucard, in order to wake up Walter. There's a problem with that. Where's the Crimson Stone? Because in Lamb and Innocence, Dracula couldn't, not Dracula, Matthias couldn't really kill Walter. Like, Walter is pretty much immortal because he has the Crimson Stone. And as long as he has the Crimson Stone, he can't really die. And it's also implied that even without the Crimson Stone, he can't fully die. So what Matthias does is, once Leon weakens Walter enough, he basically swoops in, takes the Crimson Stone, and uses his magic to seal Walter inside the stone. So basically, Walter is not even dead. He's kind of locked in an internal prison that he just can't escape from. So Alistair doesn't have the Crimson Stone. He's assuming something that logically doesn't make any sense, because Walter, his whole plan is to revive a vampire that's quite possibly not even dead. Then there's also Dracula being awake. Now, okay, you can make the argument that once he forcefully risen Castlevania up, Dracula was kind of like forcefully revived. But that doesn't make any sense, because, like, say with Portrait Ruin, Bronner had to sequester a specific part of the castle off to basically prevent Dracula from being roaming around and hunting Bronner, so that way he can also absorb his energy. And it's implied that Dracula's been absorbed so much. That's why Dracula kind of looks very different than he looks traditionally. He has the black hair, he has more youthful features. That's a lot of his energy being taken out, so he has a more youthful appearance. But here, he retains his Castlevania look, and he seems to have been awake the entire time, because he only really attacks Walter once he lifts up the casket. You can make an argument that he was sleeping and the fighting outside of his casket kind of woke him up, but that's reaching too far in ways that don't really make sense in the context of the story. Because Walter and Alistair's plan was kind of, it seems like it was kind of banking on the fact that he was dead, that he was kind of knocked out. So it's just it's just a weird shambles. There's also the appearance of Judgment Maria when they're trying to get a grimoire. There's also the very weird assistance of when Charlotte gets the grimoire, she gets like the souls of demons, like from like Soma Cruz does from Dawn and Arya Sorrow, which makes sense because that's a power exclusive to Dracula. Dracula would have to die in order for that power to even be given, and even then, Soma only got the power because he's technically Dracula's reincarnation, and also the fact that it's also kind of another power of not so much the Crimson Stone, the Ebony Stone, I believe. And there's just so many little moments that kind of pile up and cause like this really, really catastrophic consistency problem that kind of ruins my enjoyment of the story. Is all I can really say. But yeah, that's what I will have to say about Nocturne Ruin. Would I recommend the story? No. It's too amateurish. The care outside of Maria and Alucard, there's not really any enjoyable characters. Um, there's not the consistency is all over the place when it comes to the lore. Like it's really bad. I haven't even touched on the whole Order of Ecclesia existing because that's a whole can of worms in and of itself. Um, there's just not really a lot to like about this story. Do I have a favorite part? I do like this little story that Dracula tells everyone at the end before shooting him off the castle. I thought it was kind of hilarious with him telling just a more mundane story of when he was human, kind of just messing with a group of criminals who were robbing people's houses. That was nice. What would I change about this story? A lot. First off, get rid of any mentions of Order of Ecclesia. Hell, get rid of Oliver. Instead, have Death himself show up at their house and say, "I need your help. I need your help, man." Uh, get rid of the Lucaria so you can say they just let them house it. Let it just be a duo four. Expand fix up the plot holes, i.e., you can have the whole thing is kind of kicked off with Alistair getting into Dracula's tomb, desecrating Dracula's coffin, and taking the Crimson Stone. So that way, that clears up the plot hole of reviving Walter because Walter would be in the Crimson Stone. So that way, when he does his plan, he can just crack the Crimson Stone. Walter kind of comes out. He has a Crimson Stone in hand. Ta-da! And now you have a revived Walter running around in a way that makes more sense. You would also have to get rid of the Dracula story because without the Crimson Stone, Dracula cannot fully revive. That clears up that plot hole. In essence, just having Alistair get his hands on the Crimson Stone before the events of the story just immediately clears up the two biggest plot holes of the story. Immediately. So not Dracula, Death shows up, gives them the details, tells them that I literally can't access the castle because it is present in the franchise with Portrait Ruin. Bronner, of course, he basically made his painting with with special locks specifically prevent Death from interfering. Hence why when you beat Bronner, he's actually weak enough that Death was actually able to pierce the painting and finish off Bronner, thus releasing Dracula. It makes sense. Have Slorg and Guy but act as the shopkeepers with that kind of constantly asking for updates. They enter the castle. Everything kind of progresses a little bit more. You could have a more to reflect the time since the Castle of Dracula is a creature of chaos. Have it be a more modern take of Castlevania, or hell, you could even borrow elements from Lamb and Innocence, like he's trying to recreate the castle in Walter's image. Like they go to the theater, they go to the Anti-Souls Mystery Lab, they go to the Garden of Madness. You can just do a lot of interesting stuff. If you want to do clearing finish, and you can have them separate, or you can have Alucard and Maria enter the castle from one path, and Jonathan and Charlotte enter from another path, and each chapter you kind of switch between the two and their journeys to kind of meet up. There's so much you can do with this story that I think honestly I think a rewrite should be done. Well, it's just me. So this has been Nocturne of Ruin by Draconic. Honestly, I hope this one has done the author justice, as I don't think I have enough energy to do a third one. So yeah, this has been Dark Symphony 777. And cut.